totally get it. But my name's Kim, and I started my company 9 years ago. It's been a crazy ride over the course of 9 years. I am a first-time entrepreneur, and I like to always point out that I'm an accidental entrepreneur. So I feel like what always gets talked about in the press and with a lot of people is that you hear these stories about whether it's Gary Vee or Mark Cuban, who are like, I was selling candy in the back of the bus, or I had a lemonade stand, or I had a lawn mowing conglomerate, or like a babysitting gang. I did not have any of that. I was the one who was buying candy from the kid in the back of the bus, 50 cents for a pink Starburst. I paid for it. I was fine with that. I think that if you're an entrepreneur at a good age, like a young age, good for you. That was not me. Didn't dream of entrepreneurship, didn't think I was going to be an entrepreneur. I went to university for marketing at the University of Florida in the business college. I think I took like 2 entrepreneur classes because they were easy and not that many credits, and I didn't want to graduate early. Sure, I guess I could say that I took it because I had a dream, but I didn't. So my dream was to work at a corporate job and to work at a magazine company, which I ultimately did when I left college. So I always start off by saying that because I think groups like this and people in the group can be a little intimidated, because my guess is there's probably 20 of you in here right now, or 30 of you. If I had to guess, there are maybe 10 of you that are super, super entrepreneurial. Like you were the kid selling candy in the back of the bus, and go you. And there's a lot of stories for people like you out there. And the other 10 people in the group maybe are like, yeah, I did a couple entrepreneurial things, whatever. And then there's 10 of you in this group that are like, I don't know, I'm in this group because like entrepreneurship seems kind of cool, but also like this will look dope on my resume. You're my people. You were my 10, where you're just like, this looks good on a resume. So just all of that to say that you could end up being an entrepreneur, even if you're not super, 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 I'm going to be an entrepreneur. And I think that's always important to say, because that's the story that is unsexy and doesn't get talked about. And what does get talked about are the more sexy, I was an entrepreneur from a young age, Gary Vee shouting curse words in your face. Love Gary. That's not my style. So that's really important. I would say for tonight's purposes, it's 9 p.m. where I am. I assume it's like 7 where you guys are. I would say that I would love for me to talk, but then also to make this a dialogue and not a diatribe where I just talk at you and you're like, what am I going to do for my Instagram reel later? That's cool too. We can brainstorm what you put on your reels, but if we can make this a dialogue, and if there's questions you guys have or specific things, I know a couple things that I want to hit on, because there's things that I wish I had known when I was in my early 20s and graduating from university that no one told me. And if they would have, I probably would be a lot better off right now. So I'm going to go over some of those, but then I think there's a chat function. There is. I just opened it. I assume everybody has access to it. So if I'm saying something and you have a question, or I'm not, and you just have a question, let's have a chat about it, because I'm here and you're here, and why the hell not? So here are 3 things that I'm like, why did no one tell me this? Number 1, your network is your net worth. Who you know and who you can access is everything. Sometimes people think, oh, well, it's about how smart you are, and it's about, for entrepreneurship, sorry to say, maybe for a couple positions, if you want to be like a CTO engineer, you need to learn how to code something and be really smart at that. That is a possibility. But for the most part, it's about who you know, and it is about your network. And I say that because I feel like when a lot of people leave university, myself included, You have like your bros, you have the people like this who are in this group, and then senior year comes and you're like, deuces, I'm out of here. And you go on without your life, and you're like, Gwen, I don't even remember Gwen. What was her last name again? And then like you never remember her and you never connect with her, and off you go. And what you don't realize is in 2 years or in 3 years, Gwen is going to be working at the place that you want to do a partnership with for your startup. But you don't have that connection anymore because you left the university like deuces. Bad idea. You should be connecting with every single human being, 1, on this Zoom call, 2, on your other Zoom calls, and 3, just in general at the school, because there is a little funny saying, which is very true. If you guys have ever played this game on really long car trips, called 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon. And this is how the game works. The game works that you're basically 6 degrees away from anyone. So if I pick someone right now, Oprah, that was my last client. Oprah, I'm 6 degrees away from Oprah right this second. Why? Well, 1, she's my client, so that doesn't count. But I follow her hairdresser on Instagram. That's one connection. But let's say I pick someone even crazier. Kate Middleton from the UK, Royal Family. You can play 6 degrees where my hairdresser knows a cousin whose brother, whose sister is her assistant. Like you are 6 degrees from anyone in the world. So the more people you have in your network, the larger your outreach is. So right now, if everybody on this call logs into LinkedIn, this is going to be your holy grail of laziness, because obviously keeping in touch with all these people on all these Zoom calls would be impossible. So what you do is you set up a LinkedIn, you take everybody's name, Dylan, TJ, Nolan, you type all of that into LinkedIn, you link up with everybody, and you continue to do that. So if you don't already have a LinkedIn profile, or you're snoozing on your LinkedIn profile, don't do that. If you need help with your LinkedIn or getting it set up or your profile or whatever, I totally have you. If you go to the homepage of my website, which is just kimkaupe.com, I created a 5-step resource plan for your profile. It's free, it's easy. It's going to take you, I don't know, 30 minutes, maybe 20 minutes to just kind of zhush up your stuff. Okay. Just like clean house, and it will help you activate your network online. This is going to be important, 1, if you start your business, but even if you're like, I just want a corporate job and like maybe I'll dabble in entrepreneurship later, it's still going to matter. So that is one thing that I wish in school someone would have told me, because I didn't connect with anyone. I left the University of Florida and I was like, moving to New York, bye Florida, you guys are crazy. And I left, and I mean, I have a couple friends for sure from university, but the large majority, don't know, can't remember, don't know where they are. Maybe we're connected on Facebook. I barely log into that program. So unclear. But I would say, please, please, please do that, because your connections are going to be your strength as you fly into the world. So absolutely, absolutely do not sleep on LinkedIn. That's number 1. Number 2, once you're like, okay, I have my LinkedIn stuff under control, number 2 is get a mentor. Get a mentor. If you're feeling super ambitious, get more than 1 mentor. Mentorship is so important. It's so key. And it doesn't have to be this very formal, scary thing. So I have a lot of people say to me, Kim, like, I don't know about getting a mentor, because it's like dating. Like, do I ask them to coffee? Do I ask them to like be my mentor? That's awkward. Am I supposed to like send them an email? It just feels weird. Everything feels weird. Don't feel weird. Here is like a very, very, very easy step process on getting a mentor. Find someone who's a couple years older than you, preferably if they went to your school. Alumni love students, love students. I'm on this call, I didn't even go to your school. So there's a case in point. Old people like me love young people like you. So if they're a graduate of your school, even better. But if not, whatever. Find someone at a company you think is interesting, at an organization you like. Maybe it's a founder, maybe it's an entrepreneur, I don't know, whatever. Connect with them on LinkedIn. If it's not creepy, connect with them on other platforms. So if they have a public Twitter account, follow them on Twitter. If they have a public Instagram account, follow them on Instagram. I mean, don't be creepy. If it's like a private account with 5 posts on their Instagram, it's probably pictures of their kids. Don't be like, request, like stranger danger. Use to your discretion. But if it's open, connect with them. Then if they ever post anything, comment on it, cool, whatever. And then send them a message on LinkedIn, or if you can find their email, send them an email and say, hi, I'm Isaac. I'm a college student. I think what you do is super cool. Do you have 15 minutes to talk on the phone with me? I'd love to, understand more about what you do. Maybe they say yes, maybe they say no. Let's say they say no. Great, start over, do it again, pick somebody else. And then remember to go back that person in a couple of months. Let's say they say yes, great. Get them on the phone, ask them whatever questions you want. Then this is the key. This is what nobody does. And this is why it's awkward and why they don't turn into mentors. You have to ask for homework. What does that mean? When you get on the call with somebody important, if I get on a call with Richard Branson right now, putting it out in the universe, Richard and I on the phone with each other, the minute we're getting done with the 15 minutes, I'm gonna be like, Richard, what's a good book that you would recommend for me? Or Richard, what's a good podcast that I should listen to? Or Richard, what's a good newsletter that I should subscribe to about traffic funnels? Or what's a good newsletter I should subscribe to about entrepreneurship? Whatever subject you're asking them about, marketing, branding, whatever. Then whatever they tell you, do it. I know this seems like this girl's out of her mind. She's talking about like 101 shit. Do it. I am telling you, because I do this now with people, 90% of people don't do it. You're like, I think you should read this book. I think you should listen to this podcast. I think you should read this article. I think you should subscribe to this newsletter. And then it's like crickets. Never hear from them again. Don't know if they do it. So if you actually do it, you actually read the book, you actually listen to the podcast, whatever, wait, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks. I'd be writing an email to Richard. Richard, loved the book you recommended. So great. Here are my top 3 takeaways from the book. I thought it was really interesting. Then you can say, do you have another book recommendation? Or do you have somebody else that you think I could talk to about marketing? So there's step number 1. Now they know that you're reliable because you actually did the homework that they gave you. And you're asking them for another connection. So do you see the game here? Like then you do the same thing over, wash, rinse, repeat, wash, rinse, repeat. And it sounds so simple, but when people ask me questions like, how did you get all these celebrity clients? And how did you do this? And how did you do that? And I tell them the answer, which is be nice to people, ask people their opinion, and then actually take their opinion. People are like, that doesn't work. That's too easy. That can't be it. Your dad must know someone. I'm like, my dad lives in Florida. I can guarantee you he doesn't know half of the clients I work with, even what they do or their name. He knew Oprah, obviously. I'd be scared if he didn't. But literally other people, he's like, Machine Gun Kelly, who's that? Is that a bank robber? No idea. So that is all to say that you have no idea the power in just being curious and the power in actually just putting yourself out there and listening to people and doing things that they tell you to do, because then they're more likely to recommend you to people. They're more likely to be like, wow, that TJ, what a bright kid. Let me introduce him to somebody else. And again, if you guys just like take people's advice, like what books to read or whatever. Again, people love also giving advice, and they love giving advice that's helped them because it makes them feel like I made a difference in the world. I don't know if this is going to make a difference in the world, but God, I hope so, because it's 9:30 at night. So could be watching Queer Eye, but instead I'm with all of you guys. So I hope this works. I hope some people download this LinkedIn stuff, and I hope some people make some mentors and connections. We'll see. So that is number two. I would say the last thing that I'm like, why did nobody tell me this? Is that if you do plan on being an entrepreneur, which maybe do, maybe don't, whatever. So this advice is good for entrepreneurship, but it's also good for corporate. And that is to ask for help. Ask for help. I think when I started with entrepreneurship, I had this idea that asking for help was admitting that I didn't know what I was doing, which I didn't, and admitting that I didn't know everything, and that was a failure, and that wasn't a good idea. And honestly, it was the exact opposite. What I did not realize is that the majority of people around you, if they're connected to you on Instagram or if they're connected to you on LinkedIn, for the most part, unless they're secret evil humans, they want to see you succeed, unless they wish you ill, which is just, you should cut those people from your life. But usually they want to see you succeed. So in those early years of entrepreneurship, I really had to work on asking for help. And like, here's a great example. First 6 months of entrepreneurship, this is 2011. So you have to remember, this is before fancy fun websites like Wix.com and Squarespace.com, which are like really easy to make websites. This was back in like the WordPress days. I didn't even know how to make a website. I didn't know how to do that. There was no easy plug and play way to do that. And so I was stuck, and I was trying to like learn code off YouTube. Terrible idea. Might I recommend that you never do that. And trying to build this website, couldn't do it. Finally, after like 6 weeks of this, I couldn't get the website, messing with it every day. My boyfriend at the time was like, why don't you just put something on Facebook saying, does anyone know how to make websites? And it was so blatantly obvious that I was like, that will never work. But I was like, fine, I'll humor you. I write on Facebook, hi guys, you know, my company is starting up. I need help building a website. Does anyone know anybody? Floods of comments. What can I help with? How can I help you? My little brother knows how to do this. My cousin. And it turns out in one of those comments, a friend was like, my roommate's little brother has to do a project for his university. He'll do it for free if he can use it as part of his project. I don't care. Great. Use it for your project. And he built us an entire website. And I would have never had a website in the beginning, or if it was, I'm sure it would have been ugly because I would have tried to do it myself and I was terrible and we didn't want to spend money. But because I asked for help, and again, going back to that networking, you know, friends, roommates, little brother, was able to connect the dots. So the power in asking for help and the power in asking your network is so, so strong. So if you're struggling with something, if you need help trying to figure something out, I hate to tell you this, you're not a snowflake. None of your problems are unique. None of your problems have never happened before. They've all happened before. They've all been solved before. So I am in the camp of don't reinvent the wheel. Don't try to solve everything for yourself the first time. Copy someone's homework. Find someone that's already done the homework and just copy it. You don't need to figure it out. Just find somebody else, copy their homework. It's totally cool. So for instance, I have a course on LinkedIn. It's called Entrepreneurship Foundations. Very simple title. Why? It's the foundations of entrepreneurship. It's like 101 of entrepreneurship. Everything that I wish somebody told me. And it's condensed into like an hour-long course. And it's like here you go. Here's everything you could want to know. Now, yes, you could start a company right now and spend 3 years, like I did, making a million mistakes. But here is something you will learn not only in entrepreneurship, but as you start your career, your most valuable asset. You can ask this to any founder. And my guess is in the beginning, most founders are going to say, well, my most valuable asset is money. If I can raise $25 million from all my investors, that's my biggest asset. Or somebody else might say my tech team. If I had the best CTO from Silicon Valley, people, that's my biggest asset. No. Your biggest asset is time. Time is the only resource that you cannot make, you cannot get, you cannot steal, you cannot borrow. So money, you can borrow it. Money, you can earn it. Money, you can get it. You cannot get, earn, or borrow time. Time is it. Time is your most valuable asset because you only get a set amount of it. And if you waste it, so that's why I always tell people, if you are starting out in entrepreneurship, consume as much as possible in terms of copying other people's homework, because you're going to save yourself so much time. I tell people, yeah, you can definitely start your company tomorrow. But if you start your company tomorrow and watch my course, I guarantee you're going to save yourself a year of headache. You could totally do that, but you're going to waste a year. So whether it's me or whether it's Gary Vee or whether it's any of these other entrepreneurs that are putting out a ton of content for free, consume it, consume all of it, because it's all just free, copying other people's homework. It's going to save you time. It's going to save you money. And at the end of the day, especially when you're starting a business, time and money are usually very tight. So saving as much of that stuff as you can is so, so precious. And when it comes to saving money, I would say spend your money on the things that matter, and the rest, forget it. Beg, borrow, steal, whatever, but do not spend money on fruitless stuff. But you do need to spend money on what matters. Okay, what matters? I'll give you one of my biggest mistakes when we first started the business. So we bootstrapped the business. We did not raise outside funding. We did not have angel investors. So it was all on us. And my co-founder and I were like, great, we are going to save all this money because we're going to do everything ourselves. We're going to build the website ourselves. We're going to do everything. We're going to do our books ourselves. We're not going to hire a CPA. We're not going to hire a bookkeeper. I don't know if you know this, but in college, there's an entire 4-year program dedicated to being an accountant. You study to be a CPA, and then you get to be one when you pass a lot of tests. So I say that because shockingly, you can't just wake up and decide I'm going to be an accountant today, because you actually have to do 4 years worth of learning and pass all these state tests. But for some reason at age 25, I thought, well, I can wake up today and be an accountant, and I can just learn how to be one off YouTube. Why did I think that? I don't know, but I woke up and thought, I don't know, I think I can do this. Spoiler alert, I couldn't. So I thought I did. So we spent an entire year. We started the company in January 2011, got all the way to December. And this is fun if anybody's ever had a job before. But when you have a corporate job or when you work somewhere, they take out money for taxes. So you might get paid $10, but you only see $7 because the other $3 mysteriously went to all these other things. But if you have a company, you have to do all of that yourself, which goes back to the 4 years of studying to be an accountant. But I thought, YouTube, I can do this. And at the end of the year, we got served with papers from the IRS who were like, newsflash, you're an idiot. You didn't pay your taxes correctly. You owe us $7,000 and your books are a mess. whoops, like I didn't know that New York City had its own special tax. Why? Because I grew up in Florida. And in Florida, you would pay federal taxes. And actually, in Florida, you don't even have state taxes. So I thought, oh, in New York, I have to pay federal taxes. I know this has state taxes. Who knew that Manhattan had a city tax? I don't know, probably every accountant sitting in Manhattan. Why? Because they went to college for 4 years to be an accountant. So I didn't know that. So we owed a bunch of money. Not only did we have to pay money for all the stuff we messed up, then I had to actually pay an accountant, which cost way more than if I just paid them from the beginning. And it cost me a ton of time with them because I had to correct everything that I messed up from the beginning. So there's a real case in point of when you first start a company, there are definitely things that you can bootstrap and things that you can do yourself, like websites and, making the app with the bare bones, but things like finance, you're going to want to pay for that. That's going to be something that you're like, you know what? That $400 a month to pay proper bookkeeper or proper CPA, that's going to be $400 that is very well spent. So I've just talked your ear off for like 35-ish minutes on like a monologue that would make Meryl Streep clap, I would hope, in her chair. But I would love to know from you guys, what types of stuff are you struggling with, or what types of stuff is scary? It doesn't even have to be about entrepreneurship. It can be about business and career and the real world, because like that's coming for you guys. Isaac, thank you for putting a question in here. Nothing makes me more sad than when I ask if people have questions and no one says anything and I'm looking at them and they're looking at me and it's just awkward. It's like a bad date gone terribly wrong. So thank you for not subjecting me to that tonight. Really appreciate it. Oh no, you just wrote notes. You didn't even write a question.
I could ask you a question if you wanted to. I was actually kind of antsy. I wanted to make a comment when you're talking back about the mentors. So I recently just got a new mentor. I had 2 other mentors that honestly, like, I still have them as mentors, but they weren't really working out. They weren't really what I needed. So I reached out to a different mentor. And in my first call with him, he actually left the call and told me later that he said no at first to mentoring me. And I didn't even know that. But he agreed to talk to me one more time. And in that conversation, I said, like, what would you like me to do on my end? Like, what's something that I can grow from? And like he said, he recommended a book. So I said, okay, great. So I'm going to read this and I'm going to go over the specific chapter you were just talking to me about. And then I want to talk to you about it. So let's sit down. Let's have a conversation about it in a week from now. So that's what I did. And the principles that we were working on was like, what is in your circle? So when you die, like, what are they going to say about you? And I decided that mine was honesty. You kind of get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. It was just honesty, fairness, and loyalty. And so that's kind of how we based our mentorship. And then also we based our relationship on that. And it's been great. Ever since then, I actually have bi-weekly meetings with him. So
That's amazing.
put yourself out there. Yeah, what Kim's saying 100% works. It's the way to do it. And it's the easiest way to do it. It's way easier than you actually think. So just try.
And I would say 100% of the time, if you can phrase questions for people that are yes or no, much easier to get answers. So for instance, if you said to somebody who's super busy and maybe they're only on the phone with you for 30 minutes, tell me about your hardest day. They might sit there and be like, oh, what is my hardest day? I don't know. And then like they would kind of give you an answer. Or you could say, hey, was your hardest day when you lost your first job? Or was your hardest day when you got fired for the first time? And then it kind of gives them something to go off of, because they'll immediately be like, yes, it was definitely a hard day. Or they'll be like, no, that was no problem for me. So yes or no questions also, if you can think about what you're saying and rephrase it, sometimes can also be helpful to get more out of people than something else. So I would say that as well. Thank you for asking a question.
TJ Miller also had a question. He was asking that to start that initial conversation with a mentor, should you just reach out to someone on LinkedIn, even if you don't know them, or what's a great way to facilitate that?
Yeah, I would say first and foremost, before you reach out to anybody on LinkedIn, make sure you have a nice house. And what I mean by that is you don't put a house on the market when it's looking like crap, when like the yard's looking all janky and like the front door's not painted. No, you paint the front door, clean up the yard, then you put the house for sale. So back to what I said about your profile, make sure the house looks good. Don't have the weird avatar, have a real picture of you. Don't look like a bot from Russia. You know, have your stuff filled out, connect with people, look like a real life human, a good human at that, and then reach out. So, because the first thing that they're going to do, and this is something I also talk to people about all the time, people know you. Like, I'm gonna write it here. People know you before they know you. Okay, people know you before they know you. And what I mean by that is, and you guys are all guilty of this, right? You're sitting around with your friends and someone's like, I met somebody at a party. And you're like, oh, what's their Instagram handle? Like, let me look at them. And then you're like, no, like, no, like he's not cute. Or like, no, she's not, that's not gonna work. You haven't even talked to that person, by the way. You have not even had a conversation with them. And you're like, no. So people will know you. And so you have to like really make sure that what you are presenting is like a tight package. You know, when you send them a message on LinkedIn, like make sure you spell all the words right. And everyone laughs at this. I should start screenshotting stuff. Stuff's misspelled. The other day, someone called me Rachel. My name's not even Rachel. Like, what? Like, it was obviously copy and pasted. Like, make sure, like, run a tight ship, you know, when you're going to eventually reach out to people on LinkedIn. So I would say that even better, again, going back to like the 6 degrees of separation, if you have somebody that knows that person, reach out to them and say, hey, Landon, I saw that you know Ryan. I really want to talk to Ryan about XYZ. Would you feel comfortable introducing me? And that person will either say, yes, no problem, I'll put you in touch with Ryan right now. Or they'll be like, I don't know, I had like, you know, a class with Ryan a couple years ago, but like, I don't really know him that well. So it would kind of be weird for me to introduce you. That's fine too. But if they do know them, then you're getting connected. And going back to the people say no, they're not going to say no if you have that common person. They're like, oh, well, Landon knows him, so he obviously can't be that bad. Like Landon's kind of vouching for him. So yeah, if there's somebody that you have in common, definitely reach out to them and say, look, by the way, I do this all the time. Like I practice what I preach. Like I'm always reaching out to people being like, can you introduce me? Can you introduce me? Because it just takes down the guard of who is this weirdo? Who is this stranger? I don't know this person, which you can get past that. But if you can just like skip over it, it's way easier.
A question to go off of that, and I think this might help TJ too. Do you feel like if you're straight, not let's call it cold calling, some like a mentor, zero connections, don't know them, just think that what they're doing is cool, I think it'd be a good idea to kind of go through their work experience or any other posts and be like, hey, I saw that you're the chief executive officer, you know, at Johnson and Johnson. I mean, maybe don't shoot that high in the beginning, but just like asking more specific questions and be like, I would love to learn more about like your position, or what do you do? Like, do you like your role? Like just targeted questions.
Definitely specifics like that are great. And definitely, again, if they're posting anything, like if once a week they post their favorite articles or whatever, comment, be like, this was such a great share, Rachel. Like, I loved this article. Or if they're recommending something, or if it's like, Julie has a work anniversary. You don't have to know Julie. Be like, good job, Julie. 3 years at Johnson & Johnson. Like, go you. So just so that they're familiar with your name, that is helpful. And again, like, here's another example. If you're walking down the street, ladies, Mary, Gwen, and a guy whistles at you, the odds that you actually say, oh, well, hello, sir. Would you like to have a conversation with me? No. You keep walking, because what a fucking creep. So you just go. you don't have a conversation with that person. But if it was in your class and maybe you saw somebody and they were in your class every day and you saw them every single day, and then by like the second week they came up to you, you'd be like, oh, okay, well, like I see you in class every 2 weeks. You can create that same dynamic online. So for example, and I know people that have done this, I do this. So like Sarah Blakely, CEO of Spanx, first self-made female billionaire. Don't read what they say about Kylie. That is not true. So Sarah, actually a billionaire, actually real life. I comment on all of her stuff on LinkedIn. I comment on her stuff on Instagram. I follow her on Instagram. I have no doubt that if I were to reach out to her team or whatever, they would see all that. They'd be like, oh, okay, well, she obviously has been following along for a while. This is not like out of the blue. So I would say absolutely, if there are people that you can comment on and follow so that when your name does come into their inbox, they're like, oh yeah, I've been seeing that person's name. Like it becomes recognizable. They're like, oh, I get it. That person's like been around for a while. Again, it's a fine line because you don't want to be creepy, which we've discussed. So it's a fine line between like making yourself aware and in their orbit, but not being like, this person's
Almost like you are the advertisement and you're advertising yourself. And the more you see it, the more likely is that the consumer will use it. Or
I mean, that's how I buy stuff off Instagram. If they feed me enough ads, I end up buying the sunglasses. I don't know. We'll see.
So Kim, I have a question. I'm sure you're friends with plenty of entrepreneurs and people who travel in the same circles. How do you see them and yourself kind of adjusting to entrepreneurship as it's evolving through this pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, regardless of what anybody says, this is a very unsettling time. Okay. I was on a conference call the other week and someone was like, well, what's the data to support that? And it was like, well, we're in a global pandemic. So we don't really have data because we've never been in a global pandemic before. So yeah, there is no, oh yeah, well, when this happened last week, I think most entrepreneurs and most people in business, of course there are cycles. Of course, yes, for the holidays, your sales on Black Friday are gonna spike. You know that. That happens every year. That's very cyclical. Okay, maybe something weird happens. Maybe there's a little bit of a depression or whatever. Well, newsflash, there was a depression in 2008. Most entrepreneurs can remember 2008. So they say like, okay, well, I'll just adjust the sales. This is unprecedented. Like no one, and I do mean no one in my orbit of founders has ever been through anything like this before. Our president hasn't been through anything like this before, clearly. So we're all figuring it out. And so I think at this point, it's really everyone. I think the entrepreneurs are doing great in terms of we are scrappy, we do pivot fast, we are able to make fast decisions. I think the people that are really hurting right now are the big Fortune 500 companies, are the big guys, the big Johnson and Johnsons, like these huge companies, because it's like trying to move the Titanic. They're not able, like startups, to pivot really fast and to put out new ideas very quickly, because that's not how they're built. That they're not built like little sailboats. They're built like giant ships. So them trying to pivot in the pandemic is close to impossible. So I actually think that the smaller companies and the founders that are running them are doing pretty well considering. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people will sit up and say like, things are going great, but I'm not one of those people. I'm more of like a keep it real kind of girl. And yeah, this is unprecedented and super hard. And I think all the founders that I've talked to are just trying to make lemonade out of lemons at this point.
Hi, Kim. I have a question. So kind of going back to your experience becoming an entrepreneur and entering the field, what do you think are some of the most like important steps you've taken to get where you are today?
Well, obviously the ones I just said, but I think in addition to that, I would say steps where I am today. Oh, I didn't do this, but I wish I would have, which is if you are going to start a company, if you think entrepreneurship is interesting, you should prepare the people around you, your friends, your family, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your roommates, whoever, because you choose entrepreneurship, but they have to deal with it. So I did not do that. I was just like, yay, I'm going to be an entrepreneur now. Woo. And I missed a lot of birthday parties and I couldn't go on family vacations and I couldn't go out to the movies or the boozy brunch anymore because I had no money because I was trying to start a company. And my friends got mad at me. My boyfriend broke up with me. My parents were pissed. And I felt like, why can't everybody understand that I'm building this thing? Like, how selfish of them. They're rude because I'm over here trying to build this thing and you're not being supportive. So, like, you suck. And that's actually not the case. It would be like waking up tomorrow and somebody else completely changed your college major. You'd be like, wait a minute, I didn't pick this college major. I picked that other college major. And that's what all your friends or your boyfriend and girlfriend or your parents or everybody, like, they woke up one day and you turned into another person and they were like, wait a second, I like the corporate version of Gwen way better than the entrepreneur version because she's fun and she takes tequila shots on a Tuesday and she stays out with us till 2 a.m. instead of being at home working on her startup that nobody knows what it is. So they won't like this new version of you. So I wish that I had actually sat down and had conversations and said, like, hey, this is something I think is interesting. This is something I need your help with. This is something I want you to go in on with me, so that they understood, oh, my major for college is about to change. And they could, like, get on board with the change instead of waking up one day and being like, I definitely didn't pick this. So that's another thing that I think, and by the way, that's true in corporate too. I have a lot of friends who, even in this pandemic, you know, for years they worked in banking. I have one friend, she worked in banking, went through this pandemic and is like, you know what? I want to be a yoga instructor. I don't know, people are having midlife crises, cool. But like literally was like, this pandemic, you know, money isn't everything. I want to follow my passion and be a yoga instructor. My advice to her was like, you should tell everybody in your life that, so that when this pandemic's over, they're not like, what happened to our friend?
Right.
And is this yoga instructor in front of us? So that's another piece of advice that I would definitely give if you're thinking about entrepreneurship.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. The LinkedIn advice was super helpful. And I was just wondering, like, specifically when you're going through with the ask, like, let's say you've been commenting on their posts for a while and now you're reaching out and you're saying, I'd like to have a conversation with you. Like right now, it doesn't even have to be coffee. It could be like a 5-minute Zoom call that wouldn't take up much of their time. Is your focus on like wording it in a way that like I can provide value to you in these 5 minutes? Or is it only on, I'm curious about learning more about this. Do you have 5 minutes to just teach me about it?
It depends on who you're emailing. So I try to look at it like a hierarchy structure. So if you're trying to email, like, I don't know, let's call it a senior manager or below, maybe like an SVP or below, I think you can totally ask for a Zoom call and say, you're a student, look how cute you are, you know, you're a student, you love learning. And they're so smart, flattery will get you everywhere. They're so smart, you love what they've done, oh my God, they're so incredible, and you just want to learn because you're this adorable little student. So totally play into that card. That will probably work and you can probably get on their calendar. If you're trying to get to somebody who's like SVP and above, they will probably not get on a call with you right away. So the approach I would take for somebody like that is to ask for homework up front. So to say like, oh my gosh, I love what you're doing. You know, I love that you're the CMO of whatever. Do you have a book that you recommend? If hopefully they respond and give you the book, then you kind of go in the opposite order. You read the book, you tell them you really like the book. Do they have 5 minutes? You're a student, you know, you're so adorable. So again, it would depend. So like, you know, Oprah's assistant would probably get on a Zoom call with you. Oprah's COO not getting on a Zoom call with you. So you kind of have to like figure out where they are in the hierarchy of importance, because the higher they are, the less time they have. So they probably wouldn't have time for a Zoom call. So I would say it's probably a little bit of a test, but the good news is about the pandemic is a lot of people are home. And so they don't have meetings, they don't have travel, so they also have more time for things like this of like, hey, can I hop on a Zoom call and learn from you for 15 minutes?
I have a question about time. You said time was the most important asset. And I was wondering, how should we as college students prioritize our time? Because in my opinion, like most classes I take feel useless to me, and my extracurriculars excite me. So I was just wondering, how should we prioritize?
Yeah, I mean, if I could go back and do college again, I would do it totally differently. I was focused on the wrong thing. And by that, I mean, I was focused on my grades. Hear me out. And I do this whenever I speak to a large group. If you want to be a doctor or a dentist or an architect or an engineer, I need you to care desperately about your grades. I cannot be having you mess up my surgeries. I cannot be having you have my house fall down because you didn't pay attention and you didn't do the architectural designs right. Like, I need you to pay attention. I need you to get straight A's. I need you to be a bookworm, because you're going to be a doctor and you're going to be cutting people with a knife. And that's some serious stuff. If you are going to be anything that's not those things, you want to go work in business, you want to go work in PR, you want to go work in branding, communications, music, entertainment, whatever, your grades don't matter. Sorry. The world is changing so fast. The stuff in my marketing book wasn't even relevant a year later because social media boomed when I was in college. So your classes matter less. Now, don't want angry notes from parents. Go to class, get good grades. I'm just saying, if you're gonna do a B instead of an A, and you could get an A, but that's gonna be 6 extra hours of studying, or you can take those 6 hours and join a group like this. This is more important. This is where you're going to get the connections. This is where you're going to hear from people. This is where you're going to connect with somebody like me on LinkedIn. And in 6 months, when Nolan messages me and says he wants to talk to so-and-so and I connect them, like, that's going to be more valuable than you going from a B+ to an A in your marketing 303 class. Doesn't really, like, marketing 303, not making the difference for you. So, but if you're a doctor, yes. God, if there are any like people who want to go into anything like that on this call, good God, please disregard everything I'm saying. So I would say, if you can use the extra hours in your life, in your time on virtual campus, what is this called? Virtual campus? Let's go with it.
Yeah.
And do things like extracurriculars. If I could go back in a time machine, I would say Kim, because I was obsessed with getting straight A's because I was like a dork. I would say, get the B, it'll be cool, and join the International Business Society. We had this thing at University of Florida called Cicerones that were basically like greeters, but they got to meet all of like the important people that came to UF. That would have been a really good thing for me to do. I could have probably met a lot of really good business people, but I wasn't thinking. I was thinking about the A and not thinking about real life. So if I could get back in a time machine, I would think more about real life and not necessarily about, I want to get a B+ instead of just a regular B. So I'm going to spend 7 hours with the TA this month. Do not pass go. Like, do not do that. because I just think if you want to go into any of those fields that I talk about, and quite frankly, if you want to go into any of those fields I talk about, a lot of time they would rather train people themselves, or you're doing like training on the job. So it doesn't, your grades in school don't matter. And I say that because I know a lot of people with some really awesome jobs, really dope jobs, like working with like cool people, whatever. They are so dumb. They're so dumb. They don't deserve the jobs they have, but they know the right people. They're bros with the boss. So it doesn't matter that they're dumb because they know the boss. And so it's really about like who you know, not necessarily how smart you are, for those categories that I talked about, not the other categories, only the ones I talked about.
Thank you. Yeah, I was like thinking, because like today, for example, I just spent like 4 hours reading about religion and anthropology stuff I just couldn't care about. But I had a follow up to that, and that was besides networking in college, what do you think the most important thing or experience we should get from our 4 years here?
Oh, I did this. This was good. I did know that I was going to have to find a job after school. And the most impressive thing that you can get when you are getting a job somewhere is like glowing recommendations. Not just one of these like, Nolan worked in the marketing department from June 2020 to December 2020. No, that's not good. You want somebody who's like, I loved Nolan. He was so great. He's amazing. He's going to be the best. And what I realized when I was a senior, going to go off in the world, that I really needed those like glowing reviews, not the just like reviews. And so I knew that there were some things I was doing on campus with some organizations that it was going to be worth it for me to put in extra time with that. There was specifically one teacher, he was like the dean of our business college. I don't want to say I suck up, but I did spend some extra hours hanging around the dean's office saying like, hi, I brought you a donut. Like just doing some nice stuff. So that by the time that I graduated, the dean knew my name, the dean knew that I was helpful, the dean knew that I was volunteering for things, the dean knew that I was around. And I can tell you, when I got my first job at Condé Nast, the HR department was like, whoa, the dean of the business college at the University of Florida, which is one of the top 10 public schools in the United States, is personally recommending you, not some TA, not some whatever, like the dean of the college. They were like, okay, like, I see you. So I would say like, whoever that is, and that could be the person if you work at a company, Starbucks or wherever, like that's your boss or that boss's boss or whatever, like get someone who is of some semblance to like actually know who you are, like actually know your name, actually able to vouch for you, not just the sort of like throwaway references. Because the thing is, with your first job, you're not going to have the street cred of your other jobs. Like right now, if I try to find a job, there's like a million people that I could have do that. But when I was transitioning from college to my first job, you sometimes like, you don't have a lot of people as references because like it's your first job. So find whoever that is for you and seriously invest in time of like a glowing review.
So one of the common things that I'm hearing tonight is that it sounds like networking is something that can be extremely valuable only if you know how to do it correctly. Are there any books or resources, and this is kind of you giving all of us homework at this point too. Yes. So what should our homework be, specific resources to become better networkers?
Better networkers. I feel like so much of this I've just like learned the hard way. I mean, there's always the classic books. If you want to read like 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, you know, that's always like a staple to read, things like that. But I would say honestly, a lot of it is going to be trial and error. And so if I could offer one piece of advice, it's that networking is like a muscle, and especially if you're shy, it's like, oh, like the last thing I want to do is like network and like, ugh, like you don't want to do it. It's not of interest to you. It's not great. Like practice it.
Please have your mics off if
Evan was having us party with him for a second. I can't see you, Evan, but I just heard you.
Great.
And to go off that a little bit, TJ's question, I've read The Compound Effect, and I know that there may not be like a staple book just for networking, but I know the compound effect goes into like just those little things that you're doing every day that's going to come back like 2 years from now, that's going to really benefit you. So if you're like networking, like, you know, multiple times a week, you know, you're going to get successes and failures, but those successes may come back around, you know, like I was saying, like 2 years from now. And it's kind of just like a process. You got kind of like continually network is the way that I look at it.
100%. And I would also just say, like, just know that anybody that tells you no, you have to reframe that phrase in your brain, especially if you want to become an entrepreneur, that they didn't tell you no, they just told you not right now. Kind of like if you've ever been around a 4-year-old who's asking for candy or asking when Santa's coming, and they're like, is he coming yet? And you're like, no. And then like 2 hours later, they're like, is he coming yet? And they're like, no. And then eventually you're like, Santa Claus is not coming until next week. Like, you're kind of like that. Like, you just have to be like, this is not no, it's just a not right now. And I tell this story because it's so important, but when I grew up in Florida and I grew up on Jimmy Buffett music, you guys probably don't even know who that is because he's super old, but he makes like beach type of music. Anyways, I loved him. And when I first started my company, I was like, all I want to do is work with Jimmy Buffett. Like, that is my dream client. I want to work with him. And starting in like 2013, every 6 months, I emailed his team and was like, hey, I saw you have a new music video out. I really like it. Like, would love to do something if it makes sense. No. 6 months later, hey, I saw that like he's opening up at Madison Square Garden. Like, that's really great. No. 6 months later, hey, I saw that he won a Grammy. Like, congratulations. Like, this went on for 7 years. 7 years. Do you know how many no's that is? That's a lot of no's. No, 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 over and over and over and over again. And like a little mosquito that you just can't swat away, I just like kept coming back, buzzing around. And finally, 7 years later, I got a call from them and they were like, we have a project that we think you make sense for. And I worked with him and it was amazing and it was super great and I loved it. But that was like 7 years of hearing no a ton from the same team over and over again. But I was nice, but persistent. And so as you go into entrepreneurship or as you think about things and exercising this muscle of networking, yeah, you're going to hear no's. No, I don't have time to get on a Zoom call with you. No, people don't respond, whatever. But you have to just keep telling yourself, it's just not right now. Not a good time. They're unavailable. They're out to lunch, whatever. But like, I'm going to try again, or I'm going to loop back around. So it's not a no forever.
Hey, Kim, thank you for stopping by. I actually have like one last question that kind of, that I was really piggybacking off and of, like, when you said like asking for help, you said like, it might seem so simple, but there's some steps that people overlook. Oh, like, that's too simple. Like, that's too easy. And I think that a lot of us in like entrepreneurship, we're like, oh, like we see the YouTube, we see everything, and we're like, oh, that's so simple, everyone can do it, but like we don't do it. So like, can you kind of hit on how important that is, like to ask for help and like to actually follow the directions?
Oh, and first of all, nobody likes asking for help. That's
Yeah.
also something, like no one's like wakes up being like, I can't wait to ask for help today. I mean, I've tried to train myself to do that, but like it's unnatural to sometimes ask for help. And so I think that it's so important, especially when it's things that you think like, well, oh, people aren't going to have time to help me. Like my example with the website, you know, oh, like no one's going to pay attention to this, or no one's going to help me do this. Again, like unless you're surrounded by complete savages, which hopefully you aren't, people are rooting for you. Like people want to see you succeed. Like your friends, your family, your roommates, like no one's out there being like, can't wait to watch Gwen fall on her face, unless they're evil. And like, who wants that? So the majority of things that you think I'm not going to ask. And by the way, sometimes it has nothing to do with business. So I'll give you an example. Like my mom's in town right now because I called her a couple weeks ago and was like, I feel overwhelmed. I need help. I'm trying to do all this stuff and I'm not very good at it. And you are very good at it. Can you fly here and help me? And she was like, sure, I'll get on a plane. I'll book a ticket. Now, it's not like overwhelming help. And like, yes, she vacuumed today. And yes, she did my laundry. And yes, she like made dinner. And those are all helpful things too. So I think sometimes, especially people around you, like moms or dads or cousins, people think like, well, they know nothing about the app I want to build. How's my dad going to help me if he knows nothing about apps? Okay, he might not know about apps, but he might help you grocery shop, or there might be other things on your to-do list, because in order to survive, there's other things that you must do in life that other people can help you with some of the other things. So maybe not business, but other things.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Anyone have any last questions before we
I guess
give Kim her time back?
My question that I've kind of had for a while. So this is very, very specific to me. As you can see, I have my background with all my different stuff in it. So I started a company that basically just take all your social media and puts it into one place. So it's kind of similar to like LinkedIn. You can think of it that way, but it's strictly like just for like social media. And not just in the way that you think of social media, it's also like SoundCloud, Venmo. We're going to add like GroupMe and Zoom. How would I market that towards people kind of like yourself who aren't like influencers, but they have like a very engaged following and use YouTube and use all these different channels? Because that's kind of what it's optimized for.
I would say my biggest piece of advice, and this is true not only for you, but for anybody who's selling something, is forget about the features, forget about all the bells and whistles. Really think about, from your consumer standpoint, what are they getting? So if I get an email, because I get them all the time, that's like, hi, Kim, we help people get sales, B2B sales, delete. I'm already deleting it. They're canned. I know exactly what they look like. And I'm like, meh. I got an email the other day that literally said, are you overwhelmed with writing blogs? And my immediate thought was like, yes, I actually hate writing blogs. Who is this? This person's got me. So I think the minute you tap into what you're actually solving, so not necessarily that it has 5 plugins and it also includes Venmo and it also includes Zoom. No, what you're doing is you're saving busy people time. So if anybody's ever heard of the company LastPass, it is a company that saves all of your passwords in one master place, so you only know one password. Now, if you go on their website, they could say things like, we're encrypted and we secure all this stuff. No, they're like, are you lazy? Do you hate memorizing 65 passwords? People are like, yeah. I hate memorizing 65 passwords. I don't know what all those 65 passwords are. It's like, do you just want to know one password? And everyone's like, yeah, I just want one password. Like, that's their marketing. The marketing is, are you lazy? Do you like remembering 65 passwords? Or do you just want to remember one password? And everyone's like, sold. And yes, they have all these other, they're encrypted, the banks, you could put your Bitcoin stuff in there. Their authenticator programs are very advanced, like all this other stuff. But that's at like the bottom of the page. So I think for you, Isaac, and anyone else, it'd be like, what are you actually solving? Like, that's what you should lead with and say, like, are you overwhelmed with logging into 10 different social media channels? Yes. Would you like all your social media channels in one web page? Yes. Okay, here we are.
So for you, like specifically, I'd be like, Kim, like, I know you're on all these platforms. Are you overwhelmed with having to deal with them, having to send all your usernames out to everyone every time you want to like reach out? Do you wish that it was all just in one place and you could just send one link?
Yeah, like that's your pitch. Yeah.
Great
Like,
advice.
also any time that you can play to people's laziness, genius.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think, look at Roomba, self vacuum. People are like, I don't have to vacuum. Done. Roomba. Like, anytime that you can play to people's laziness, 100% do it, because there are people who, again, going back to my most valuable resource of time, somebody could spend 20 minutes vacuuming every day. That is totally possible. You can spend 20 minutes vacuuming every day, or you can pay $200 for a Roomba and you just bought yourself 20 minutes every day. So that Roomba, that $200 just bought you hours and hours of time. That's the business you need to be in.
I love that concept where you talk about buying time.
You need to save people time, because they will buy that from you.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's also free, but yeah.
And they're lazy. I'm lazy, so I feel totally fine saying that.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I guess I can ask you one more question. Why are you doing this?
Because I wish that somebody did this for me and nobody did. And when I was in college, the people that we got to come speak at our groups were the CEO of Build-A-Bear. I'm not even knocking Build-A-Bear, great company. Or it was like the SVP of Bank of America. And they were super corporate companies. And they told you all the corporate PR-worthy answers about life. And that's not true. They were like, do well in school and you can one day be the CEO of Build-A-Bear. That's not true. Like, your grades don't matter. And I'm sure somewhere there's an SVP of Build-A-Bear who's a total idiot, but like his dad sits on the board of Build-A-Bear. Good for him. Like, let's talk about that. And I think nobody likes to keep it real with young people about how like it actually works in the world. And so I think I do things like this because I wish that someone would have said, you can be really stupid and be an SVP of Build-A-Bear. Because I would have been like, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Now I feel better.
Well, I think that's
I love Build-A-Bear, by the way. I don't want any hate messages that like Kim Kaupe hates Build-A-Bear. Loves it. Great company.
Yeah. Honestly, you've been probably my favorite speaker so far that we've ever had. And I think it's because you're the most relatable person that I've heard. And especially when you're talking about the school advice piece, like not trying to focus on getting that A, or like, what's a 6% difference going to be on your test if it costs you 8 more hours? And I would like to give myself a pat for this, because this is always my excuse to people when they're like, dude, you like spend half the time studying like that we do. But it's always like a 6% difference. They're always like on that. So I'm like, I'm doing these other things and I'm focusing on that. So I just think that that's really important, and I really appreciate you for saying that. Thank you.
Of course. Well, thank you guys for having me. And the biggest gift that you can give to me is like, don't sleep on this. Like, I better see a lot of downloads coming in for these LinkedIn profiles, and I better wake up tomorrow morning with like, I don't know how many people are in here, 32 LinkedIn connections. Because if I wake up in the morning and there are only 5 LinkedIn connections, I'm going to be like, I'm never speaking to this school again because they're sleeping on this great advice. And by the way, shout out to everybody who's actually on video. Not like shaming anybody who's not on video, but so appreciate actually seeing faces. How do teachers do this? I can't just speak to a bunch of black boxes. So sad.
Yeah, that's funny you say that actually, because one of my professors, the only one, requires it that everybody has their camera on. And
Yeah.
I don't even know if you're allowed to do that, like with the school regulations, but he like makes it known that you have to have your camera on.
That's my boy, because let me tell you, talking to black screens is like sad. There's no vibe. Can't get vibe. So thank you to you guys for keeping your lovely faces on.
Thank you so much, Kim, for coming to speak. We really appreciate it. I'm sure you're a very busy person, so you taking the time to share with us your life secrets. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you guys, and good luck with the rest of your virtual semester. I hope there's lots of yoga pants in your future and that you can play beer pong by yourself. I don't know, maybe like against the wall. Could be a new game.
We'll see.
I threw your LinkedIn in the chat, so everyone feel free to spam Kim because apparently that's what she wants.
Yes.
Hit her out. And Kim,
right.
I got to make you a bridge
Thanks, guys.
account so that you can just send one link and have everything in one.
Yes, exactly. I'll be waiting for the pitch.
Perfect.